Some sins can only be cleansed by saving children. When Will Smith walked onto the Tonight Show stage with that characteristic charisma and warmth that had made him one of the world's most beloved actors, nobody expected him to reveal the most devastating chapter of his redemption mission. Jimmy Fallon had planned a thoughtful interview about Will's latest projects and his healing process after the Oscar incident. The audience was ready for the inspiring stories and genuine wisdom that always came with a Will Smith appearance, but what Will was about to confess would silence Studio 6B and prove that sometimes the most important performances happen not on movie screens, but in foster care facilities where abandoned children learn what a real father should be like. The cameras were rolling, the audience already captivated by Will's magnetic presence, and then he spoke 14 words that changed everything. I help foster kids because I need to atone for what I did to my own son. What came next wasn't just television, it was a revelation about failure, redemption, and the sacred responsibility of transforming the disappointment you caused your own child into salvation for children who never had a father to disappoint them. Will Smith had always been known for his dedication to family values and his role as a father, the actor who transformed personal experiences into universal messages, entertaining millions while inspiring them. But what audiences didn't know was that Will's understanding of fatherhood had been completely shattered following his behavior at the 2022 Oscars, and the disappointment he saw in his son Jaden's eyes had led him to a secret mission working with children in the foster care system. The Second Chance Fathers program had begun 3 years earlier during Will's identity crisis following the Oscar slap. Seeing the disappointment in his son's eyes and realizing he had completely failed as a father had given him profound insight into what foster children felt when they had no father figure at all. I'll never forget the look I saw on Jaden's face that night, Will later explained with tears. It was a look that said he didn't recognize the man who was supposed to be his father, that he couldn't be proud of me anymore. In that moment, I understood I had completely failed as a father, and that failure taught me what it feels like for children who grow up without fathers. Most children in foster care experience father absence, either because their biological fathers were never present or because they abandoned them. These children struggle with trust issues, abandonment fears, and lack of male role models who could show them what healthy masculinity and paternal love should look like. These kids are experiencing 1,000 times the disappointment I gave Jaden, Will said, with obvious emotion, but at least my son had a father to disappoint him. Foster kids don't even have that basic foundation. They've never known what it feels like to have a man care about them unconditionally. Will's first encounter with a foster child had been at a Los Angeles foster care center where he had volunteered during his community service. 12-year-old Marcus had been in the foster system since birth and had never experienced a stable father figure or male role model. Marcus asked me, "Are you a real dad?" Will remembered with heartbreak. He didn't know what a real father was like because he'd never seen one, and I had just shown my own son what a father should not be like. The irony was devastating. 30-second engagement hook point. But what Will reveals at the 2-minute mark will completely change how you see him forever. And trust me, you need to subscribe because this story gets even more heartbreaking. That conversation with Marcus had revealed the unique hunger that foster children have for paternal connection and guidance, and how Will's own failure as a father had actually prepared him to understand their needs in a way that successful fathers might not. Working with child psychologists and specialists who focus on trauma recovery in foster children, Will had developed a comprehensive program that provided consistent father figure support to children who had aged out of traditional adoption prospects or who had experienced multiple placement failures. These aren't just entertainment activities or celebrity visits, Will emphasized with conviction. This is about showing children who have father wounds what a real father should be like, giving them unconditional love, consistent presence, security, and helping them develop a sense of self-worth that comes from having an adult male who believes in them completely. Over 3 years, Will's Second Chance Fathers program had reached 76 foster children, ranging from ages 8 to 17. Each relationship was built slowly and carefully, with Will committing to long-term involvement rather than short-term charity appearances. I worked with a 15-year-old girl named Sarah. Will remembered with obvious love and pride. Sarah's biological father had abandoned her when she was 5 years old, and she had been bounced between 7 different foster homes. She didn't trust men at all and told me directly, "You're just here for publicity. You're going to leave me too." Working with Sarah had been particularly challenging and meaningful because Will's own feelings of failure and shame actually helped him connect with her abandonment trauma in ways that a traditionally successful father figure might not have been able to achieve. What I told Sarah was completely honest, Will explained through tears. "I'm not a perfect father. In fact, I disappointed my own son so badly that he probably wishes he had a different dad. But I will never abandon you because you don't deserve that, and I know what it feels like to fail the people you're supposed to protect." That vulnerability and shared understanding of failure had been the breakthrough that allowed Sarah to begin trusting Will and eventually other adult figures in her life. The most profound transformations happened when foster children experienced what consistent, unconditional paternal love actually felt like. Not perfect fatherhood, but committed, reliable, shame-free, masculine presence that celebrated their worth regardless of their past trauma or behavioral challenges. Sarah is now 18 and starting college on a full scholarship, Will said, with tears of pride. She calls me her practice dad because she says I taught her what to look for in the men she allows into her life. She learned that real fathers show up even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Several other children who had participated in Will's program had gone on to successful transitions into independent living, college, or career training, with many maintaining ongoing relationships with Will as a permanent father figure in their lives. Tonight's appearance on The Tonight Show was supposed to focus on Will's latest film and his personal healing process following the Oscar incident. Jimmy had planned to discuss his approach to rebuilding his reputation and his thoughts on accountability and growth. The interview had started with Will's characteristic humility and thoughtfulness. He had shared insights about his recent work, discussed his approach to learning from devastating personal mistakes, and demonstrated the reflective maturity that had marked his recovery process. But when Jimmy asked him how fatherhood had changed Will's understanding of responsibility and whether his relationship with his own children had influenced his perspective on accountability, something shifted in his expression. The question had been meant to explore his personal growth, but it had touched on something much more significant that Will had been considering sharing publicly for the first time. "You know, Jimmy," Will said, his voice taking on unusual gravity and weight, "what I did at the Oscars didn't just destroy my career and my reputation. It destroyed who I was as a father to my children, and that complete failure as a parent led me to understand something about children who have never had any parent to fail them." The audience grew completely silent, sensing that Will was moving into territory that was much more serious and personal than his usual reflections on fatherhood, accountability, and personal growth. "That sounds like a really profound realization that led to some kind of action," Jimmy said, with genuine curiosity and deep respect for where the conversation was heading. Will was quiet for a long moment, his usual confident energy replaced by profound vulnerability and visible emotional pain. "It did, and for 3 years I've been trying to be the father to other children that I failed to be to my own son. Working with kids in foster care who have never experienced what a real father should be like." The studio was completely focused on Will's words now, the energy shifting from entertainment to something much more meaningful, serious, and emotionally charged than anyone had expected. "Will, it sounds like you're working directly with children in the foster care system," Jimmy said softly, clearly moved by the direction of the conversation. Will's eyes filled with tears, a particularly powerful sight coming from someone known for his strong public persona, masculine energy, and ability to maintain composure under pressure. For 3 years, I've been serving as a father figure to 76 foster children who have never experienced real paternal love. Children who have been abandoned, abused, or simply born into situations where no father was ever present. The audience was completely silent now, witnessing a side of Will Smith that transcended his celebrity status, the raw guilt, shame, and determination of someone who had transformed his own devastating fatherhood failure into a mission to provide paternal love for children who had never experienced it. Jimmy, can I tell you about something that taught me what real fatherhood actually means? Will asked, his voice growing stronger despite the tears streaming down his face. Please, Jimmy replied, clearly understanding that something profound and life-changing was being shared with millions of viewers. Will took a deep breath and spoke directly to the camera with the sincerity and vulnerability that had made his personal journey so compelling. I provide father figure support to foster children through my Second Chance Fathers program. 76 children over 3 years who have never known what it feels like to have a man love them unconditionally, protect them consistently, and believe in their worth regardless of their past. Jimmy's expression changed completely as he grasped the full magnitude of what Will was describing. You're personally providing fatherhood to children who have never had fathers? I proved to the world that I was a failed father to my own son, Will replied with quiet conviction and hard-earned wisdom. But that doesn't mean these children should never experience what paternal love is supposed to feel like. My failure taught me exactly what they've been missing, and that knowledge carries a responsibility. Tears were streaming down Jimmy's face as he witnessed this extraordinary revelation. Can you tell us about one of these children and how this relationship has developed? I met Marcus when he was 12 years old, Will said, his voice becoming infinitely tender and filled with paternal pride. He had been in foster care since birth and had never experienced a stable father figure. He looked at me and asked, "Are you a real dad?" Because he literally didn't know what that meant. Will paused to gather himself, clearly reliving the emotional weight of that first encounter. I told Marcus that I was trying to learn how to be a real dad, that I had made terrible mistakes with my own son, but that I wanted to show him what a father's love should feel like. Marcus is now 15, preparing for college, and he calls me his second chance dad. How has this work changed your understanding of what fatherhood really means? Jimmy asked through his tears, clearly profoundly moved by the story. It taught me that real fatherhood isn't about being perfect or never making mistakes, Will replied, with wisdom that had clearly been earned through years of difficult work and self-reflection. It's about showing up consistently for children who need you, especially when showing up is difficult. These children showed me that my greatest failure could become my most important purpose. As the segment concluded, something unprecedented happened. The entire studio audience rose to their feet and gave sustained applause that lasted over 6 minutes. But it wasn't appreciation for a performance or entertainment. It was recognition of authentic redemption, acknowledgement that they had witnessed personal failure being transformed into profound service for others. Final engagement hook. If this story moved you like it moved our studio audience, hit that subscribe button because we're sharing more untold celebrity secrets that will restore your faith in humanity, because sometimes the greatest failures become the most beautiful redemption stories. Will's revelation became one of The Tonight Show's most impactful and widely shared segments in the program's history, sparking national conversations about the foster care crisis, the importance of male role models for abandoned children, and the transformative power of using personal failures to serve others who are suffering. Most importantly, Will's disclosure had shown that sometimes the most important fatherhood a man can provide is not to his own biological children, but to children who have never known what a real father should be like, proving that true strength and masculinity lie not in never failing, but in using those failures to ensure other people don't suffer from the same absence of love.